Welcome, Internet, to Psychoanalytic Talk. Today we're going to talk about the combined parents fantasy, which is a fantasy that was postulated by Kleiniain. So here I have to start by saying that this is a deeply archaic and completely unconscious rooted fantasy in which the child feels that the parents are unified in an intercourse that's ongoing, absolute, total, that they self-gratify each other, and which the child is completely excluded. So this is quite different from just the primal sin of Freud, i.e. the intercourse of both parents as imagined by the child. It goes beyond because there is a persecutory element that's very present in the combined parent fantasy. So for Klein, the idea is that basically the child is not just excluded, is that both parents are merged together, that they are undifferentiated. There is no sexual difference between both of them. There is no personal, intimate, psychological difference. They're just one, a unique entity that is there to persecute the child, because the child feels that whatever they do, whatever part they interact with, it's all the same entity. So this fear of this persecution is one of the primary motives behind the fact that the child might afterwards feel that there is no sexual difference between both father and mother. They might even go so far as seeing father as the extension of mother, or seeing mother as the extension of father. Often that can lead to fetishistic beliefs in which, for example, there is this idea that women can have penises, or that the fetish is a replacement for the woman's penis, basically. So it is a fantasy which basically takes its whole force from persecutory elements that, if they're not appeased, can lead, in Kleiniain's thinking, to later sexual perversions or fetishism. So that's very interesting, but there's only one aspect, because what you have to understand is that fantasy is very deeply rooted, and the more persecutory the parents are towards the child, the more the child might feel that, for example, the father, let's say, is the extension of the mother. And it's something we can see in children and later adults that are victims of physical abuse in their homes, in the sense that during those moments where they're victims of abuse, they will often see both parents as basically united in their sadistic impulses towards themselves. There is this fantasy that basically, for example, in an abusive home where the father beats the children, there might be this belief, this very core belief, that father is only extending the will of mother, or that, even worse, mother is exciting father to beat them. Therefore, in this dynamic, unconsciously, father becomes just a mere extension, just the acting arm of mother, the bras armé, we would say in French, i.e. the weaponized version of mother. But it is still in the context of mother. I should also say it might be reversed. It might be mother is merely just a part of father, that she's unable to fight back because she's just been absorbed by him. And here we have this deep connectedness of absorption, because the combined parental figure is a figure that's virtually self-cannibalizing and absorbing both elements, but without being distinct. Therefore, it's a mass, it's an entity. And often we see, for example, clinically, that with patients that have imagoes that are both persecutory and idealized, the combination of both, often there is a lack of differentiation between both parents. Like going to try and investigate the father imago, let's say, you fall onto the mother's imago, and inversely. And basically there is no difference. And criticizing one is just like criticizing the other, so it's impossible. Or even worse, that the parents themselves share some kind of implicit and absolute, not even connection, but alliance, but an alliance that is against the child. Therefore, it's not just that the child is excluded, it's that the child can be potentially destroyed by this fantasy, by this absolute being that is in front of him, and that they feel that they have no remedy, or they can't fight back or defend themselves. Therefore, they're helpless against it. And I should say that basically it's, in a way, it's very interesting because Klein in this shows that it's not just a fantasy that occurs when the child discovers procreation. It's a fantasy that's much more ancient and much more thorough. And the only way we people, humans, I mean, can leave this fantasy a little behind or have it less massive in our minds is this fundamental idea that through love, through care and affection, both parents become more distinct, become slowly separated in the mind of the child. It's not a combined parent, but two different parents, and two different parents that can sometimes be good and sometimes be bad, because that's the very interesting thing with a combined parent, is that the combined parent in the unconscious of the child is purely bad. There's no good that comes out of it, because the good is within the entity. It's like they basically self-pleasure themselves, therefore there's no good coming out of it. There's only bad, there's only virtually only hatred. Whereas if there is love, the child slowly separates both parents and then basically goes and proceeds to go into the Oedipal phase, in which both parents are distinguished and have different roles. Because here in the combined parent, they don't have different roles, they're basically interchangeable. And also, and I should add, because Klein insists on this, there is an interchangeability of genitalia, i.e. the penis is in mother, but also father. So there's no difference. That entity, the combined parent, has everything at the same time. That everythingness, that absoluteness, makes that the child does not fit into this, and even worse, can even be just an add-on, something that's not necessary to that dimension. Therefore, it goes beyond exclusion, and we go into the destructive anxieties and anguishes. And basically, it is very visible within, as I was saying earlier, people who have had unfortunately abusive parents, because fundamentally it often comes into the fact that there is a deep fear that both are connected, that trying to gain the sympathy of one will only result in the sadism of the other, as if the child was trying to address themselves to the entity and the entity just turned and attacked. So therefore there's this deep fantasy. And also in pathological narcissism, there might be this fantasy that father is just merely mother's toy, that there's no fundamental core difference between what mother wants and what father can be. Therefore, father does not even exist, because there's only mother. And inversely, there can't be that fact of there's only father, that mother is too weak, she's not strong enough to fight them, therefore father absorbed her or just uses her for his own gains and for his own needs. So therefore it is when it continues within the development of the child, if it's still very present, still very powerful, and hasn't been diminished by the ability to love, to care, and to basically give good things to the child is going to stay with this idea unconsciously, and it's still going to have a lot of power in the mind of the child. And then basically it's going to feed into adulthood, into persecutory elements and non-differentiation between both sexes, and at the most extreme, at the denial of the differences between other humans, that in a way other people are extensions of themselves, or are fundamentally people that can only hurt them. And there's this deep fear and also it can lead, if the child has better constitution, it can lead to this fear that opposing anyone would result in destruction, or that opposing one individual, all others will know and will try and destroy them. Therefore, there can be an immense fear and trying to please everyone in order to not be destroyed. So I think that this fantasy of the combined parent is a very important fantasy, as it explains so much, especially clinically when working with people who have been or abused or themselves are abusers, because it shows a dynamic within the unconscious mind that is very prevalent, that when there's abuse, when there's neglect, there is this fantasy that goes back to something that's basically all-powerful, almighty, and that might destroy the individual. At least this is pretty much my take on the combined parent fantasy and what I understand of it. If you disagree or if you have any questions, feel free to do so in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.